Ian Sereno, and I'm moderating something new. This is Chatham Taj Talk. This is a discussion with candidates. This is a friendly, amicable one where everybody gets to speak their mind without anybody jumping down their throats. And I'd like to introduce our candidates. This is Brian Bach. He's a former commissioner and he's running again in November from District 3. And here is Mike Roberson, our sheriff, our incumbent sheriff, who's running for re-election. And I guess I'd like to start with Mike. And if you could tell us what you think are the biggest issues facing law enforcement in Chatham County now.
Well, our biggest issue right now is the opioid epidemic. And we work with the health department to make sure that we get ahead of that. There's more people being killed by overdose from opioids that are being killed in car wrecks. And so you cannot arrest your way out of that problem, and you can't treat your way out of that problem. So we are focused on education and intervention as part of the solution for the opioid issue. I'm also working with the Attorney General, Josh Stein, on a statewide task force to change some of the laws like the STOP Act to help limit prescription drugs that the doctors are overprescribing.
Alrighty, and now Brian, you were a commissioner before and you want to be re-elected to the commission. And what do you think the biggest issues facing Chatham as a commissioner? What are you looking at?
Well, there's a lot of issues that are important, but I think one of the biggest things we've got facing us over the next 4 years is the implementation of the strategic plan that was just approved by the current Board of Commissioners. And currently that plan is just a plan. But over the next 2, 3, and 4 years, all the regulations and the ordinance that go into implementing that are going to be put into place. And how those ordinances are put in there are going to have significant impact on a lot of the issues that I'm very concerned with as far as jobs and protection of private property rights, and really just about every other aspect of Chatham life. So we got to get it right, and I want to make sure that we are including as much public input as possible.
Alrighty. Well, now back to you, Mike. In Durham, the statue of a Confederate soldier got pulled down, and sort of charges were thrown out against everyone. And what are you going to? I mean, these Confederate statues are quite controversial. And what are your thoughts about protecting the one that's sitting in front of the courthouse right now?
Well, that's really a state law issue. And so the state law says that it can't be moved right now. And so I think what has to happen is there's a process for that to go through that the actual state legislatures have to deal with. I know the county commissioners have spoke about that. For the sheriff, my opinion is we just want to do it the legal way. And if it needs to be moved and the community wants it moved, then it should be moved. We just need to do it a legal way and not take action into our own hands.
Already. Now, Brian, looking forward, you talked about fleshing out some of those regulations. And what specifically do you want to see happen that you're concerned about that?
Yeah, specifically, the strategic plan is very comprehensive. It affects everything from land use to taxes, to you name it. It encompasses everything from water protection to how many cars are going to be driving in the county. So it's important. And the plan was put together in about 16 or 17 months. To me, that was very rushed. If you put it into perspective, when I was a commissioner, we had a small area plan with the Cary in Chatham, which is a small area just in one part of the county. That took almost 7 years to do. It had 23 revisions based on face-to-face community contact with the people making the decisions. This current plan was done, as I said, less than 18 months. There were no meetings that were commissioner-led, that citizens were allowed to speak and converse with commissioners. There was always someone in between, like a consultant or an advisory board. And I want to make sure that doesn't happen as we implement these rules, because the people that are living in the areas that will be affected, they know best what's going on, and I don't think they need a filter between them and the commissioners.
Okay. Now, Mike, immigration is a big deal, and the national administration it seems very opposed to undocumented immigrants. And I was wondering how that is going to affect your job in Chatham County.
Well, for the Chatham County Sheriff's Office, we're state officers, not federal officers, so we cannot enforce federal crimes. It's really important for us to have a relationship with the people that live here. And so we do work with immigration if it's a violent crime. If they're here looking for a murderer or someone who's had sex with a child, and I want to work with them. But we don't have the resources or the manpower to deal with a lot of the other issues. And it is important for us to have a one-on-one relationship with those communities. We want them to call us when they have crime or when they have issues, and so that relationship is extremely important. One of the things that we've done is we've taken our Spanish-speaking officers and formed a group to do outreach in the Hispanic community, to not just get them involved in our culture, but get the Hispanic community to get us involved in their community. What you'll find out in the Hispanic community, they don't all agree, and they're not all from the same place. And so it's important for us to make sure we understand where they're from and what they're dealing with, and how we can overcome those barriers of communication to make sure they're getting the services that they need.
Alrighty. Well, now I'm going to try something different with you, Brian. I'm just going to toss out some and see what your reaction is. What do you think about Chatham Park?
I'm a big supporter of Chatham Park. We need jobs, we need industry, we need a nice planned community in this county, and it all goes back to our tax base. 91% of our tax base comes from personal property tax, rather than from business tax, rather than industry. So we need that. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to keep up with the schools that we need to build and everything else the county needs to pay for. We can't just keep raising our personal property tax. So we need that. But additionally, we need people to work in the county. If they're working here in the county, they're going to spend money in the county. So there's lots of other things, positive results that come from having a well-planned community like we've got planned.
Already. And what do you think about it, Mike?
Well, I don't have a personal opinion about Chatham Park. I will tell you that growth has some growing pains sometimes. And one of the issues with growth is that as service providers, we're about 18 months behind on getting the resources you need for the growth that's happening. So when someone builds a house and taxes are paid at the end of that year, then it goes into the county coffers and we can ask for it next year. So we're always sort of playing catch up to growth. Now I'd rather have growth than recession. It's always better to be going in that direction. But keeping up with the growth takes planning, and it takes people that have done it before and can look down the road of where we need, what we're going to be needing 3, 5, and 10 years down the road. And so as people move here also, the expectations change. We have a lot of different cultures moving here, different expectations that people bring from where they lived to here. And so it takes some diversity in thought. We can't do it the same way that we've always done it, and we have to be flexible enough to include those people in our thought process.
Alrighty. And now, Brian, I'm going to ask you, what are your feelings about how polarized politics have become and how angry one side tends to be at the other?
Well, obviously, I don't think that's a good thing. And it would be nice if we could talk more and we had more events like this. Obviously, the sheriff and I are on different political parties, and yet we can talk, we can work together, and I think that is what we need. What I try to do is most of the issues that create that friction and that anger you're talking about tend to be state or national issues. What I'm trying to do is focus strictly on Chatham County and those issues that the commissioners have input on. And then what you find is that the party lines get a little bit more blurred, and you find out that everyone here really wants the same thing. We want a good quality of life, we want more jobs, we want good schools. It's how we get there that can differ in opinion, but locally we can be a lot more amicable than some of the national issues.
Okay, good. Well, now I'm going to open this up there. If there are any questions from the audience here at the Roadhouse or from the folks who do speak live stream, speak up, and we're happy that the candidate's going to be happy to answer. Alrighty. I guess I'm going to move back to another question for you, Ray, which is with the terrible violence that we're seeing in schools in terms of these shootings, these disturbed kids shooting at their classmates. What plans are there in Chatham to prevent something like that happening?
Well, I think you said the key word is to prevent. We're doing a lot of work to be able to respond to those incidents. And for probably 20 years now, we've been training on how to respond. And we have the right equipment and the right gear. And we actually train the school teachers in how to respond. And we train the students how to respond. We even training other agencies how to respond. But any response is too late. And so we are really good at working with the school system. If we have an incident nearby a school, that they'll do a cautionary lockdown. We've had a couple incidents, one at Northwood and one at Chatham Central recently, where we've showed that we can help try to prevent things like that happening. The other issue gets a little more investment oriented in that generally a first grade teacher can tell you the kids that need help in the first grade. And those kids are the same kids that are behind by the time they get to high school. And I think as a community, we got to start working on our preventative issues earlier. You know, we're not going to be able to go into the high school and prevent it right then. We need to look probably 10 years ahead of that and say, what do we do with these kids? How do we get them up to speed? How do we get the services they need there? I know that on the state level, I'm working with the Sheriff's Association to talk about some of those issues so that our guidance counselors can really be guidance counselors. And so that DSS is talking to guidance counselors and talking to law enforcement and talking to the teachers about how we problem solve that earlier on.
Alright, thank you. Well now, Brian, I guess the next question comes to you. As a commissioner, what do you see you can do to help some of these kids that aren't getting help now, that are becoming such whose lives go astray later on? I'll just say.
Yeah, the biggest thing that we can do as commissioners, really our role in the sheriff's department and the school system is really funding.
Yeah.
So it's our job and incumbent upon us to develop good working relationships and good partnerships with the school system, K-12 as well as the community college, and then good partnerships with the Pittsburgh Police, the Cyrus City Police, and the Sheriff's Department. And then, as we're working that through, we can determine what the budget needs to be, and then we can fund what's necessary.
Okay, good. Yes.
Yes. So I have a question for each candidate here. So first for Mr. Bach. The commissioners are considering adding 2 at-large commissioners into the county. I want to know your thoughts on that. And before you answer, ask Mike his question. There is a new law on the books, and forgive me, I forget what it's called, that if kids are out doing drugs or getting drunk and one of them is, their health is in trouble or their life is in danger, they can call and they won't be arrested or get in trouble. What are we doing to implement that? How are we educating the kids on that? How are we getting the word out on that?
So what you're talking about is called the Good Samaritan Law. And the Good Samaritan Law says that if you have a friend that needs medical need, it's focused a little bit on the opioid issues, that if you call 911, you won't be charged with the item that caused the effect. And so that is something that we're pushing out here because we've had some local deaths from this exact same thing. And we've had kids that didn't call 911 that left the person because they were scared they would be charged and didn't want to be connected to it. So there is that law in place. We have to get that out a lot better. And I do know that the health department now is scheduling some advertising to try to do that. There are 2 young ladies that go to school here in Chatham County. They're helping pushing that out across the state by doing videos and doing talks for that law. But that's important to know that, but we also need to educate the rest of the kids because a lot of them think by taking these prescription pills that somehow it's safe. And so less of them are doing the illicit drugs and more of them are doing the prescription drugs. And so education on the front end is going to help us a lot more. If we wait until the incidents happen, and we're really still playing catch up.
But I guess that it's more of we're educating them on not to do drugs, but at the same time, are we or can we educate them on this law so what's happened here twice in our county doesn't happen again?
Yes, and I'm sorry, we probably wasn't more clear on that. The health department is already doing that. We're fixing to put billboards up about that same kind of thing. We're going to do a video with those two young ladies, put it on Facebook, try to advertise what that law is a little more here locally. But at the state level, they're working on the exact same things. And so that needs to go statewide. It's not just a Chatham County issue is my point. 4 people a day die of opioid overdoses. That's more that's getting killed in all car wrecks. And that's in North Carolina. And so it's not just a Chatham County issue. We're a little bit ahead of the curve in some of the things that we're doing, but this is a huge issue that we've got to tackle.
Okay, and to your question on the adding 2 commissioners at large, there's really 2 separate issues being discussed right now. One is to expand the board from 5 members to 7, and then the other half of that gets lumped in is those 2 additional members will be voted on at large. And of course, as you know, what that means is the entire county votes on those candidates. So currently, the entire county votes on all 5. So I think what they're discussing is possibly having some district voting, meaning only the people that live in a particular district vote on that candidate, and then some at large. The number going from 5 to 7, I personally don't think that's necessary. That can be debated, how many commissioners you need. I can make a pretty strong argument that 5 is enough. Some other people might be able to make an argument that 7. But the having them be voted on at large is a concern to me, because if you look at the way our county is the population of our county, the Northeast by far has the densest population. The folks out west and the people down like in the Moncure and the southwest area, there's not as many people down there. So what happens is their votes generally get overwhelmed by the people in the Northeast. If you can look at recent elections, and you can see that the candidates that live, say, in District 4, which is, say, that Moncure area, they can win their district pretty handily, but then the folks in District 1, where there are so many more people in that area, overwhelm it, and that's who wins the election. The same with District 5, and anything basically west of 87. So the concern, if you add more at large, what you're doing is you're really watering down the vote and the impact that unless you live in Pittsboro and 15501 and going up to the Northeast, you're really not going to have much say. And if I'm going on too long, just let me know. Because I've given a lot of thought to this one. So if you look at that, to me that's a problem. People that have their issues in their district don't really get a say in their district. And our county is really diverse in the issues faced in the Northeast and the issues faced in Siler City, in many cases are completely different. But maybe even more importantly, if you just look at the demographics, the much higher percentage of African Americans and Hispanics live in the western part of the county than they do in the Northeast. Northeast tends to be mostly white. So what you have is not only the folks that have specific western issues having their votes diluted, you have the minority vote being diluted even more. So that concerns me.
Mike, I would like you to do a little follow-up, if you would, about the opioid crisis here. Do you know how many fatalities there have been in Chatham, and per year or anything like that, or any kind of numbers?
I don't have an exact number how many's been in Chatham. It's the issue with the overdoses. A lot of times they're not reported as overdoses; they're reported as accidents. A lot of these opioid incidents are happening in upper and middle income families, and so they are able to deal with those issues a little better. And so when it gets down into the low income areas is where we're really going to have a problem. And so the STOP Act is designed to stop some of those prescription pills. It's the reason we do the drug take back, to get pills out of the houses that you don't need. When that dries up after the STOP Act comes in, we predicted heroin's going to be here more than it is now. And heroin is a replacement for the opioids. And so when they start doing the heroin, then we have problems with HIV, hepatitis, needle exchange kind of issues. And some of the other communities around us are dealing with that now. I won't say that it's not here, but it's not predominantly here right now. And so we're really trying to get ahead of it and be proactive about what we're doing in that area.
Great, thank you.
I'll ask a question.
Please.
So speaking about that, as a parent here in Chatham County, oftentimes, and either one of you can answer this, oftentimes we have to leave the county to go find activity for our children. So, you know, that and put together in some of the issues that we have is that oftentimes there doesn't seem to be enough, not just recreation, not just basketball, football, but there are many other activities that should be brought and made available to our young people. Can you gentlemen speak to that, please?
Yeah, I would agree. We need more of those types of things in the county. And where a lot of that comes from, when you look at other major areas, whether it be a county or a town, is corporate sponsorship. And as I said earlier, we don't have the corporations to have enough corporate sponsorships, which is why I'm a big supporter of the advanced manufacturing site in Siler City, a second one in Moncure, and then of course Chatham Park. As those get built out, and as we support them to bring in those industries, more corporate money comes. And then with corporate money comes sponsorships to help pay for those types of recreational facilities.
I think you bring up a good point. It is about money. You know, if we're leaving here to work, then we don't have enough money here to have the good stuff for the kids too. And so I think as we have more jobs here, when we have more of that here, that'll help. But one of the ways we deal with that now is by having mentors in the school. We have community in schools to mentorship kids in the school. We have Boys and Girls Club. There's a lot of nonprofits that are trying to provide some of those services. It's probably not enough. And so that really is a funding issue, and so I would agree, we probably need more activities for youth.
So when we talk about activities for youth, it brings me, you know, what is there here for kids to do, but it leads me back to the zoning issue. So I look at, you know, I know the western side was all zoned, everything's been zoned, but I look up 15501 and I just think, what's going to happen on 15501? That's county. That goes through the county. Can you address the zoning issue and specifically 15501 and what's coming on up there?
Yeah, I think there's part of that. I mean, most of that portion of 15501 north of Pittsboro is zoned for commercial along that corridor. Not all of it, but a good amount of it is. But we've also got Briar Chapel Park that just came online in the last couple of years. It's still being improved as we speak, which is down in that area as well. We've got the northeast park off of Big Woods Road. So we've got some county facilities there. Briar Chapel also maintains a good number of hiking and biking trails. Again, not paid for by the county, but they're open to the public for everyone. So there are some facilities there, and I think there probably will be more as you see, you know, kind of Briar Chapel kind of build out and as they improve that park that's over there.
I have a question. This is maybe a little bit far-fetched, but the News and Observer said that this area is among the 20 finalists for Amazon.com's new headquarters. And of the 4 sites the NNO picked, one of them was in Chatham Park. Now I'm going to ask you, would you want Amazon.com's headquarters to come to Chatham County? And that's a tough one because it would change everything totally. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, my philosophy on that is it would not be my role as a county commissioner or as government to make a decision on which businesses we want in the county. If we've zoned it properly, we've got the plan in place, and they follow the rules and were able to bring however many jobs they would be able to bring, and they were nice, high-paying jobs, I would absolutely welcome something like that.
It's really not a sheriff's role to pick that either, but I will tell you that some of the issues that we look at the sheriff's office, we have a good problem in that so many people want to move here, and that a lot of people moving here have money or are retired, but there's some people that get forgotten, and that's the poor people. And so as someone moves in here and brings all this money in, the poor people have to move away because they can't afford to stay where they're at. They can't afford the taxes. And so, you know, as much as we have the people that have, we've got to remember the have-nots. And there are people still suffering in Chatham County. There are pockets here in Pittsboro, but, you know, the western part of the county is suffering more than the eastern part of the county as far as jobs and what facilities they have and that kind of thing. It's an economic issue, which I don't think is a sheriff's role, but I do think that we do need to think about those people. Those people get into the criminal justice system more because you're poor. You know, there's not a lot of rich people riding around with headlights out. There's not a lot of rich people riding around with no insurance on their car. You know, it's the poor people that get picked up on those kind of things a lot more than the people that have money. So there are some side effects to that we have to think through.
If I could build on that just a little bit, because I agree. Again, you look at the income disparity between the northeast part of the county and the western part of the county, it's huge. And so I'm going to go back to the mega site or the advanced manufacturing site. To me, the biggest way to improve affordability of housing is to create more jobs. And the more people that are working and the more money they're earning, the more they're going to be able to afford. And if you look at the unemployment rate, the poverty rate out in the western part of the county is 2 and 3 times higher than what it is everywhere else. So that's why we spend so much time as commissioners getting that site certified, making sure it was going to be marketed by the state, making sure it was ready. But on top of all of that, and we've got all that in place, there's a political portion of that. When businesses are looking to move to a county, they want to know that they are going to be welcomed. And that's another area where I think I differ from the folks that are currently in charge with the county. There's a message being sent that we don't necessarily want all types of industry, that they have to be a certain type of industry, and even those are going to be not as welcome as they would be in other counties. And I can say just recently, the Toyota plant that was looking to locate, we were initially in the running. We are a perfect site for that type of area. And there's another site in Randolph County that is nowhere near ready to build on or have everything in place that we do. And yet Toyota cut us out of the running very early on and kept Randolph in. And I think that was a political statement, I think, by Toyota, because they thought they were going to be more welcome in a different county. I think that's something we can fix as commissioners. There are a lot of things that get done, precursor votes, before a mega site or advanced manufacturing site is going to be up and running. And so it's one thing to say you support it, it's another to vote on those things that do, to get it going. For instance, early on, we needed to provide some money, economic development money to Siler City, to pay for all the engineering studies that went in order to get the state to certify it. The most logical place we saw to get that money was to sell some unbuildable, unused land in the Siler City industrial site, sell that, use the cash, give it to Siler City for those plants, which is what we did. But some of the current commissioners, before they were commissioners, they really fought us on that and said that was the wrong thing to do. Another thing is as we move on, there are some unpleasant votes that need to be taken as far, and most recently, we needed to have a land purchase option on that. There's a lot that goes into that, but the county had to basically buy an option to purchase the land so that we would be able to control it. And it was made very clear by all the economic development experts, locally and statewide, and by the landowners, that if that option wasn't approved, then we would not be able to attract. I mean, it was very clear that that was the problem. Fortunately, at least 3 of the commissioners voted yes, but not all of them did. So they vote no on all the precursor activities that need to be done to get that site up. And that message gets sent nationwide, and it's not a good message to send.
I'd like to, okay. Hello? I'd like to kind of forward on that. And this is about school funding. And for sure, we will be having a Chatham County Taj Talk regarding Chatham County schools and the improvements that need to be made. We will be having a forum about this, trust me. But would you please let us know what the role is for a commissioner in regards to funding for public schools, please?
Technically, our role is to look at the request by the school board and then either approve it or not approve it. Sometimes we can make suggestions, but we really are not allowed to say if we approve the money, it needs to be used in this way or that way. We either approve their request or we don't. Now, there are times, and I'm happy to say, when I was a commissioner, where we approved more than they asked for, and we were able to give teachers a pay raise even when the school board had not yet asked for one. But really, that is our role: is to provide the funding if we think that it's going to be used in the right way.
Ready? Well, Mike, is there anything that you would like to say that I haven't asked you already?
I want to tell you that we live in a safe place. We live in probably the best place in the world. There are more and more people wanting to move here. We're the 15th safest county. Crime went down 15% last year. It's went down steadily over the last 10 years. It's going down all over the state, but it's going down at a steeper rate in Chatham County. I want to tell you that we have the best staff in the state of North Carolina working at the Sheriff's Office. And that's not a slogan, that's the absolute truth. I'm proud that we have an agency that people want to come work. There are agencies that can't hire people and they're carrying vacancies. We have more people applying than we have positions for. And so we're able to be a little picky about who we hire. And I'm happy that we have the diversity that we have. 30% of my staff is female. The national average is 13%. And so we're more than double that. 30% of my supervisors are female, and 30% of my command staff is female. So it tells the females that are coming in that you have an equal opportunity in pretty much a male-dominated job. You have an equal opportunity here. And so we're really happy with the diversity, not just in race and gender, but in thought and culture. And so we need people that think differently. You don't want a lot of people that think the same way working in the same place. You want that diversity so you get better ideas and you get better problem solving. So I'm really proud of the people. Honestly, the Sheriff's Office, it's about the people that work around you. And that we have the best people in the state.
Ryan, I'm going to offer the same thing to you. Anything you want to say that you haven't got a chance to yet?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about economic development and the strategic plan and those types of things, but we've not talked about quality of water. And that is something, just environmental issues in general. And we can't forget that, obviously. No matter how well our efforts are on everything else, if we don't have clean air and clean water, nobody's going to want to come here, and we're not going to achieve our other goals. And one of the big areas where we as commissioners have input is on the water quality standards around Jordan Lake. We get a lot of our drinking water from Jordan Lake. And again, when we were commissioners, when I was a commissioner, we implemented the Jordan Lake rules, which are the toughest water protection rules anywhere in the state to protect our drinking water there. Now, that was supposed to go in place and be implemented by all the counties around us. The General Assembly decided they wanted to put that off for several years, but we said, it's too important, we need to implement those now. So that was the first step. We implemented those tough rules, and then the next step is to build partnerships with the counties around us to also, stop putting things in the water that shouldn't be. So we are very focused, and I will continue to be very focused on making sure that we address those water quality issues.
If the General Assembly is what's governing up the works by not enforcing it to the counties that lose a lot of money, by having to, you know, improve their runoff and their wastewater stuff, you know, what can you do without the state agreeing with you?
Well, this is an area where I'll bring up the political parties, Republican and Democrat. As you know, the General Assembly is run by the Republican Party. And it's a lot easier as a Republican to build the partnerships with the leadership in the General Assembly and to work with them and to help educate them on why that's important for our county. Because what happens a lot of times in some of these bigger counties, they don't know our issues and they're not hearing our issues from the county commissioners at this time. A good example was there was an issue, I guess it was just last summer, that the General Assembly was getting ready to pass a regulation saying that Orange County and Chatham County were not allowed to charge impact fees. Now, we're the only two counties in the state that do that, so all the other counties said, well, you don't need to do it. If no one else is doing it, you don't need to do it. And that came about because of some contention with Orange County, but somehow we got lumped in with that. And as you may know, those impact fees from developers and builders are what pay for our schools. And it's a big part of our budget. And we were going to lose that literally overnight, which would have been a huge, well, it would have just killed our budget. It would have immediately made us put a big impact or a raise in our property tax. And so I'm not a commissioner, and I wasn't last year, but I did get a call from the staff and ask if I would be willing to go up and talk to the General Assembly, write some letters to the leadership, and kind of plead our case on why they didn't need to be changing the rule for Chatham County. And I did that. So I met with them individually. I went up there and I kind of testified in one of their open session hearings. And fortunately, because of that, and they will say because of that, Chatham was kind of dropped out of that legislation. So Orange County is not allowed to charge impact fees, and we are the only county that still can. And now we may need to find other funding mechanisms later on, but that would have been just devastating. And had it not been for a Republican talking to Republicans, it probably wouldn't have happened.
Okay.
All right, so another question for each of you. You talked about if Amazon comes in and high-paying jobs and hoping, you know, that people can afford their homes. What about affordable housing? I want to know more about affordable housing. What kind of rules, regulations should be put in for that? I know it's been talked about, you know, we want to help with affordable housing, but we don't want it here. We don't want it anywhere near we are, where we want it elsewhere, but we'll put money towards it. And then for Mike, huge issue right now is gun control. And we actually had an open house here with gun control. We had a bunch of students here talking about gun control and taking questions on it. And I want to, you know, in Chatham County, a lot of hunting, a lot of people carry guns. You know, what are your thoughts on gun control?
Well, that's a good question. Number one, the gun control ends up being a state law issue. We don't get to make the laws, we have to enforce the laws. And so over the years, the concealed carry permit, the handgun permit, that has all changed about every 6 months. The biggest issue I see on the permitting process that the sheriff is involved in is the mental health system. And so it is very, very difficult to do mental health checks on people that are applying for these permits. The permits are we get those, but we have to follow what the state law says we have to do and don't do. So it's really a paperwork issue for us getting through that. As far as gun control goes, we want to focus on violence altogether. And so I think the violence part of that is something that we've done at the sheriff's office, that we've hired a victims coordinator to help deal with some of those type of crimes and victims of crime, that we shouldn't only be suspect oriented as a sheriff's office, we need to be victim oriented as well. And so, you know, that's what I would say on those issues, that we're trying to be progressive, we're trying to get ahead of those. As far as what's legal and illegal, the legislatures have to do that. The sheriff can't have a role in that.
So you don't have a role in it. You have to follow the law. I get it. You don't make the laws. But, you know, what are your thoughts on the public being able to carry these guns you know, that with high magazines or, you know, I don't even know what it's called, I don't own a gun, but rapid refire, you know?
Well, as a sheriff, I follow the law whether I like it or not. And so whether I like a law or don't like a law really doesn't matter. I do know that in the 1920s, when we had prohibition here and there was a lot of problems with automatic gunfire, that the community got together and they changed the law on automatic guns. And they put in a different thing you have to do for automatic weapons to be able to carry those. You can still legally carry them, but you have to meet different requirements. It's not my place to put those requirements on there. The community has to get there. Now, one thing I'm really happy about is that those students were up here talking about it. And when people take action, things change in Raleigh. And so, straight up honest with you, when the people decide that they want it changed, it'll be changed. If you wait on just the legislatures to do it on their own, I don't know that there'll be the change that somebody may want.
Do you want me to address
Yeah,
the
before,
affordable housing?
yeah, continue with that, please.
Yeah, the affordable housing issue is obviously a very complicated issue, and over the years, the county has tried different things, and there are ways to go about it, and you can require a developer to set aside a certain percentage of their lots for affordable housing. We've tried that, and I think that is in place still, but it doesn't work always. A good example is, in a community that has a homeowners association, sometimes that alone, even though the house might be affordable, the HOA fees kind of drive that out, and so you don't get the participation of folks that are interested. Just because we call it affordable housing doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be attractive to folks that would want that sort of housing. One thing that we don't spend enough time on is looking at the rental market that we have. Not everyone needs or wants to own a house. They would be more than happy to rent. And we have a very low supply of rental property. And that's a zoning issue in a lot of cases. When we zone something that says you have to have a certain number of acres per household or per unit, that negates the ability to have condensed apartment type living. And we're working on that now. There's a place up on 15501 that is zoned and will have some of that rental type property built in, but there's not enough of that. So when we just blanket zone the county, we're overlooking that. And that's what worries me. And we say we want affordable housing, but there are little things like that that can make a big difference. When we get away from the rental side of it, which I think we need to focus more on, the county is very supportive of Habitat for Humanity, which is another kind of avenue we can go to for affordable housing. We provide quite a bit of money for Habitat. I assume that number continues to grow every year, even after I left. It's a good program. It works. It gives people in homes ownership that would normally be able to own. So I think we need to focus both on the ownership side of it, but also the rental side, and some of that can be addressed with the zoning.
And I will make the comment, as a board member of our Chatham County Housing Authority, I want to note that we have a waiting list of over 377 people waiting for vouchers. We do have a growing homeless issue here in Chatham County that, although we're not a city, so you don't necessarily see people sleeping on the street, we do have that, and not necessarily need for comment, but as a member of the board of Chatham County Housing Authority, and we handle those vouchers, I would be remiss if I didn't make that comment. We all have talked about young people. Gentlemen, how do we get young people involved in these conversations? When we do this again, how do we get the 15 to 23-year-old crowd in these conversations, making sure that the Chatham County that we're creating today, that when we move forward, that we're leaving a strong, vibrant, community-oriented Chatham County?
Well, I think the kids are telling us that, and then we got to quit telling the kids what they need, and we need to start asking the kids what they want. Because the things that we had growing up might not be what they want. They may not want baseball parks and football fields. I see a lot more playing soccer. They may want more Wi-Fi locations. Things that they want are important. I'm happy to see the young people step up and get involved a little more. I'm happy to see the people organizing to say our voices matter in the schools. Our voices matter in what's going on in the next generation. I will tell you that we have student resource officers, deputies that work in the schools. that we listen to them in the schools, to ask them what's going on, ask them how people are doing in the school. We want to be part of that, but I do think you got to include the kids. We can't come up here and just make the decisions for the kids.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that. What I've found, and for a long time I just thought that a lot of those, the younger folks weren't interested. But it turns out they really are. And there are groups within every school, in every high school, that would be more than willing to participate in forums and in input. A lot of times they're just not asked to. So we can ask them, we can get them involved. But one word of caution I would have is that on some of these more divisive issues, and you mentioned gun control issue, the gun control issue, we need to make sure that we're not just inviting a particular set of young people to make comments on that. And you know, I came to that last town hall, there were a lot of good points made, but I felt that it was a very one-sided type of conversation, and maybe the folks and the young people on the opposite side, or a different side, maybe not even opposite, just a different side of that argument, were feeling not as free to express those opinions. And so we need to make sure, and we need to make it safe for them to have those different opinions and not to just be whatever happens to be hot at the moment.
Well, looking around, does anybody have any more questions this evening?
Sir, I have a question about, I have 3 girls in Chatham County schools, 2 of them go to Pollard. My oldest talked to me about a threat that was made at the school not too long ago, maybe about a month ago. She told me that there was an assembly from the school that talked about rumors of a threat or whatever, and it's a lot of hearsay or whatever. She didn't, the school didn't verify what was going on, but that whoever made the threat wasn't at school for a few days, then was back. But me or their mother never heard anything about the threat from the school or anything like that, just from what my daughter had said. So I'd like to know about that, or why the school wouldn't give any information about that, or anything that you could speak to that.
Well, we do have a student resource officer at that school, Kyle Smith, and he probably would know about the incident. I don't particularly know exactly what you're talking about, but I would tell you the question you're asking really needs to be addressed in the school system. They're sort of responsible for putting that information out to other students that may or may not have been involved in that. So I would address that to the school administrators. If there's something specifically after this, you want to talk to me on that specific crime, I'll be happy to talk to you. And I'll
And
try
the
to get
sheriff's
you.
office wouldn't know anything about if there was threats?
No, I didn't say that. I said the student resource officer may know about it. I don't
Right.
specifically know about it. If you'd like to talk offline, I'll
Sure.
get you some information on that, and
Okay.
I'll find out for you, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Looking around, nobody else is coming up. I'd like to thank the candidates, Brian Bach and Mike Robertson for speaking. And I'd like to thank Greg Lewis for hosting it here at the Roadhouse.
Don't stop it yet. Ladies and gentlemen, give Julian Serrano a hand for taking the time to moderate. And while we're here, before we let these nice gentlemen go, I will say for sure, whether we're streaming live or not, gentlemen, what we did tonight to come and sit down, to just have conversation, is setting the tone for how a community should be. And it is my pleasure, it is my pleasure, it is my pleasure. Give these folks a hand. And thank you, Greg. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone who made this happen. This won't be the last time we do this. It's important in the community. Discuss, define, deliver, toshtalk.com. Everyone have a good night.